Today's lesson is mukbang, a feast for the eyes. Hi, everybody. Welcome to our program. My name is Roger.
And my name is Helen.
And today we're talking about a special genre of internet video called mukbang. And what exactly is it? I've never really seen very many of these. I watched a couple in order to prepare for our program today, but of course there are probably hundreds of them out there. Are you a regular viewer of these videos, Helen?
I'm not, but my daughter used to watch mukbang before we even started talking about this phenomenon in our articles in our magazines. This was maybe 3-4 years ago. She was watching these videos, and I passed by one time and looked at what she was watching, and I saw that it was this person, this young woman, eating a lot of food in front of a camera. And I asked her, why are you watching this? And she said, well, it's interesting and it makes me feel less hungry because she was a teenager and she was watching her weight. So I didn't think much of it. But then when we were preparing for this lesson, I realized, wow, it's actually true. A lot of people enjoy watching mukbang for different reasons. One is if you are on a diet, then you can get vicarious pleasure from watching them. Or you might be watching them because you don't have access to the kind of food that they're eating because you're living somewhere that doesn't have Korean food ingredients or other ingredients that are shown in mukbang videos.
Right, and of course, we were also talking about why this is so popular these days. Maybe it's because South Koreans are more isolated these days and they don't get to eat with their families and friends so often. So a lot of people watch these videos to sort of feel like they belong to a social situation and they can imagine that they're having a big feast with other people. And as you said, maybe if you're on a diet, it might help you watch someone else eat food when you can't so much. I'm not quite sure if that would be psychologically useful because I would think that if you're watching other people eat, you'd want to eat too. You'd feel like, hey, how come they get to eat and I don't? I'm going to go out and get myself a big pile of kimchi right now.
That's right. So, yeah, it could work both ways. I mean, it could make you feel less hungry or more hungry depending on how you are psychologically. But in any case, it's very popular. However, there are also downsides, negative sides to watching mukbang. And that is what we're going to talk about today.
Indeed, let's do that. So let's listen to the first part of our lesson right now, and then we'll come back to discuss it.
While mukbang watching enables social connection and vicarious eating, it can have negative consequences too. People who frequently watch mukbang can develop poor eating habits. The huge amounts of food that mukbangers eat in a single meal could become normalized in the eyes of the viewer, who may begin to eat bigger portions of food. And since mukbangers in Korea are usually thin, it's easy for viewers to develop an unrealistic perception of eating and weight gain, which can lead to obesity.
各位好，第一部分我们看到单字 normalize， 这个字是动词，指使正常化或是使恢复正常。例如 After years of conflict, the two countries normalized relations. 在多年冲突之后，这两个国家使彼此关系正常化。另外，把字尾 ize 去掉，就变成了这个字的形容词 normal， 意思是一般的或是正常的。像是 Though he was famous, Brad wanted to live a normal life. 虽然 Brad 名气很大，但他想要过平常人的生活。接下来我们看到名词 perception， 指看法、理解或是感知。例如 David's perception of the country changed completely after he visited it. 在 David 去过那个国家后，他对那个国家的看法完全改观。也可以说 There is a perception among many Westerners that Asian employees work too hard. 在很多西方人的看法里，他们认为亚洲员工工作得太认真了。
So we looked at some of the interesting positive sides to mukbang watching. Now we're going to look at some negative aspects of watching mukbang. While mukbang watching enables social connection and vicarious eating, it can also have negative consequences too. So a consequence is a result or an effect of something. A negative consequence is a bad result or an unwanted effect. So for instance, a consequence of sleeping too much is that you might wake up feeling even more tired than before.
Exactly. So a consequence, of course, is the result of some kind of action. If you smoke cigarettes, a possible consequence would be getting lung cancer or other nasty diseases that have to do with breathing. So, of course, watching these videos, these mukbang videos, might have some negative consequences. There might be some results that are not so great as a result of watching these people eat food on camera. Now, people who frequently watch mukbang can develop poor eating habits. Of course, we suggested last time that maybe people have better eating habits when watching these videos because, well, when they watch other people eat, maybe that's enough for them and they won't be so hungry themselves. But still, if you watch these videos, it might cause you to have poor eating habits.
Right. The huge amounts of food that mukbangers eat in a single meal could become normalized in the eyes of the viewer who may begin to eat bigger portions of food. So we did mention before in the first day that what's typical of mukbang is that the mukbanger eats a lot of food. So there's usually a big display of food that looks very tempting, very appetizing, and this display is often much more than what a person would eat in one meal. So if you watch mukbang very often, then you might come to think that this is a normal amount for one person to eat in one meal. And that's not good because then you might begin to eat more food in your own meals. And as a result, you could gain weight.
But so when something becomes common practice, when everybody accepts it, then it is normalized. So if you watch these people eating huge amounts of food, you might think that is normal. It's okay. Nothing bad is going to happen to you. Hey, if that person can have 20 pounds of food in one meal, well, then I can too. So, of course, it will become normalized. You'll think there's nothing wrong with that.
Yes, and since mukbangers in Korea are usually thin, it's easy for viewers to develop an unrealistic perception of eating and weight gain, which can lead to obesity. So the fact that a lot of mukbangers are thin, they're not overweight, they're actually on the thin side, then it's easy for viewers to think that, well, if I eat all of this food, the same amount of food that mukbangers eat, I'm going to stay thin or be thin too. So they will develop an unrealistic perception of eating and weight gain. A perception is a particular way of understanding or seeing something. So this perception of mukbangers can be unrealistic. Something that's unrealistic is based on things that are not real. They're based on hopes or wishes and not what is likely possible in reality. So the fact that mukbangers are thin will give viewers an unrealistic perception of eating and weight gain, meaning they will think that if they eat so much, they will still not gain weight. And that kind of thinking will lead to obesity. Obesity is when people are not only overweight, they are overweight in a way that it becomes dangerous for their health.
Yep, and remember, obesity is quite common in the United States, and if you are overweight, then you are obese, especially if you're excessively overweight. But in any case here, people think that people on the camera look thin, and that's probably true, but I'm wondering if there's some kind of algorithm in the video program that actually makes them look thinner than they really are, or maybe they have special kind of lighting that makes these people look thin, or maybe they are really thin, but we don't see them off camera when they're doing something else to get rid of all that food later on, which we'll talk about as our lesson continues. But in any case, when you see those skinny people on camera, you might get an unrealistic idea of eating and weight gain. So, of course, we do know people out there sometimes who are very unrealistic. They have some ideas about how life works, and we realize, well, things just don't work that way. You're going to find out the hard way. You're being very unrealistic.
Yes, and a related phenomenon that creates unrealistic perceptions is Instagram, because when you look at pictures of people who are beautiful, who have perfect lives, and who seem to be constantly on holiday enjoying themselves, that is also an unrealistic perception that is being created because everybody knows that that's not realistic. It's not true. They are also normal people, at least 90% of them are.
Okay, so we've just kind of mentioned some examples of negative consequences of watching mukbang videos. I'm sure they have good things and bad things, but we're trying to present this in a fair way. Okay, that brings us to the end of the first part of our lesson for today. Let's continue to talk about some other negative consequences of mukbang again in the second part.
Gorging on huge portions that are typically high in calories and saturated fat isn't good for the mukbangers themselves either. In fact, there has been speculation that some mukbangers binge and purge. But even if mukbangers were to stay thin by fasting between broadcasts instead, the effects of this practice on their health would still be questionable.
第二部分我们看到名词 speculation 表示推测或是猜测。例如There has been a lot of speculation about the crime, but few actual facts are known. 关于这项犯罪有许多的猜测，但没有事实被了解。或是 There is speculation that Roy will be promoted this week. 有个猜测是 Roy 这周会被升职。另外补充这个字的动词 speculate, S-P-E-C-U-L-A-T-E, speculate, 指推测或是思索。举例来说Scientists have always speculated on the origins of the universe. 科学家一直都在思考宇宙的起源。又或者说 The media speculated on what the president would say in the upcoming press conference. 媒体猜测总统会在即将举行的记者会中说什么。
So before we looked at the negative consequences of mukbang on mukbang viewers, now we're going to look at how mukbang affects the mukbangers themselves. Gorging on huge portions that are typically high in calories and saturated fat isn't good for the mukbangers themselves either. So when you gorge on something, when you gorge on food, you eat so much of it that you can't eat anymore. You are stuffing your face when you gorge. So quite often, when you watch mukbang, you'll see that the mukbanger is eating a lot of food and they're doing it quite quickly as well, and the portions are huge. So often these items of food are also very high in calories. They're not exactly healthy foods. You hardly ever see salads being eaten by mukbangers. So it's food that's high in calories and also saturated fat. Saturated fat is a type of fat that you get from meat and dairy. So it's an unhealthy fat that if you eat a lot of will make you eventually sick.
They're probably full of salt and maybe sugar and stuff like that. So that stuff isn't good for the mukbangers themselves either. And in fact, there has been speculation that some mukbangers binge and purge. Now, this is a term that refers to people who eat a lot and then they take some kind of medicine or something to make themselves throw up or lose their appetite or whatever. And that's not good, okay? You can't eat a whole bunch of food and then throw it up again. That just doesn't make sense. You're doing something terrible to your body and you're wasting all that food as well.
Right. So there have been speculations, or there has been speculation that this has been happening among mukbangers. So speculation refers to a guess about what might be happening, but there is no proof, no evidence that that is actually happening. So there is speculation that mukbangers practice this unhealthy habit, but there is no proof. So for now, it's just a speculation.
Right. They probably wonder how they could eat so much food and still be skinny. So maybe people are speculating that they engage in binge and purge. But even if mukbangers were to stay thin by fasting between broadcasts, Instead, the effects of this practice on their health would still be questionable. So here we've got the concept of fasting. That's when you don't eat food. And I understand there is a recent trend in dieting called intermittent fasting. I guess you don't eat for like 16 hours and then for 8 hours you have a couple of meals or something like that. So a lot of people are doing this in order to lose weight or maybe to become healthier or something like that. So we're kind of guessing here, even if they were to stay thin by fasting between broadcasts, well, the effects may not be so great.
Yes, and I heard there was another speculation that the mukbangers were actually just spitting out the food after they chewed it, and they stopped the camera so that viewers can't see that they didn't swallow the food. So that's another speculation. But yeah, there are all of these speculations because a lot of people think it's not possible that mukbangers can stay so thin after eating all of that food. It's just not humanly possible.
So watch out if you are a fan of these videos. Please take care of yourselves. Okay, let's move on now to the third and final portion, and we'll wrap things up.
Finally, there's the issue of table manners. It's not uncommon to see mukbangers talk while they chew or make exaggerated sounds as they eat. By repeatedly watching such behavior in action, viewers may develop the same awful habits. In short, mukbang can be both beneficial and detrimental. So it's up to you, the viewer, to choose the best morsels.
"第三部分我们看到单字 beneficial， 这个字是形容词，指有益的、有利的或是有帮助的。例如 Vitamin C is believed to be beneficial to one's immune system. 巨性维生素 C 对人的免疫系统有益。或是 The president's plan was beneficial to the economy. 总统的计划对经济有助益。另外补充一个同义形容词 favorable， F-A-V-O-R-A-B-L-E favorable， 指有利的、适宜的或是赞同的。像是 Tony was lucky to get favorable weather on his vacation because it rained for 3 days after he left. Tony 很幸运，度假时天气不错，因为他离开之后下了3天的雨。又或者说 The author's latest book got favorable reviews from readers. 那位作者最新的书得到读者的好评。最后我们看到形容词 detrimental， 表示有害的或是不利的。例如 Too many late nights could be detrimental to your health. 常常熬夜对你的健康有害。或是 Eating too much candy is detrimental to your teeth. 吃太多糖果对你的牙齿不好。另外补充一个同义单字 harmful, H-A-R-M-F-U-L, harmful. 这个字是动词，指有害的或是有损健康的。我们可以说 The factory should not be allowed to pump harmful chemicals into the river. 这间工厂不该被允许将有害的化学物质注入河里。
So finally, we're going to talk about another problem of mukbang, and that is table manners. There's the issue of table manners. So when we talk about table manners, we talk about all of those things that you should do while you're eating at the table that are considered good manners. So what's good table manners is different in every culture. For instance, in the U.S., you're not supposed to slurp when you eat noodles. You're supposed to do it quietly. But in Japan, it's a sign of good table manners to slurp your ramen because it's a sign of appreciation. You're showing the chef how much you enjoy the food. So watching mukbang has also affected the table manners of a lot of its viewers. It's not uncommon to see mukbangers talk while they chew or make exaggerated sounds as they eat. So in many cases, it's not good table manners. It's not good form to talk while you chew, while you are biting on your food, because when you talk, your mouth is open and people can see the food in your mouth turning around in your mouth as you chew and talk at the same time.
Oh, that's disgusting to even think about. They chew when they're talking, they make exaggerated sounds as they eat, so that, of course, can be disgusting as well.
Yes, for the sake of the video, a lot of mukbangers make exaggerated sounds because they want the viewers to have the full experience of eating with somebody, and that includes the sound and the sight of the food and the sound that the chewing and the eating creates, and often they exaggerate these sounds so that the full experience can be transmitted to the viewers. However, all of these habits might create bad table manners for viewers. By repeatedly watching such behavior in action, viewers may develop the same awful habits. So they don't do it on purpose, but if they watch a lot of mukbang and every day they see the person in the video eating this way and acting this way, they might subconsciously, without knowing it, adopt these habits as well.
Now, in short, mukbang can be both beneficial and detrimental. If something's beneficial, it's good, it has good results. And if something's detrimental, well, it's bad and it has bad consequences or bad results.
Yes, so it's up to you, the viewer, to choose the best morsels. So to be up to you means it's your choice. It's your decision. It's up to you. It's up to you as a viewer to choose the best morsel. So here we have a double meaning. A morsel is a small piece of food. It's a small bite. So here we're talking about a small bite of food because we're talking about food. But choose the best morsels also means just select the best bits of something so that these bits benefit you. Don't choose the bits that are detrimental. Choose the bits that are beneficial.
Indeed. So when mukbangers give you eating advice, take it with a grain of salt. Okay, that brings us to the end of our explanation for today. Here comes our Chinese teacher.
各位同学大家好，我是 Hanny。 我们来看今天的文法重点。课文第一部分的最后一句写道，因为韩国的吃播主通常都很瘦，所以观众很容易对饮食和体重增加产生不切实际的看法。文中是用名词 perception 来表达看法或是理解，那它的动词是 perceive， 我们来学习它的字首字根。好，当我们看到 CAP 或者是 CEIVE 或者是 CEPT 这一类的字根呢，表示拿取、掌握或是接受的意思。那么在 perceive 这个字当中，它的字首 PER 表示完全贯穿，那么字根 CEIVE 表示接受。当我们完全接受、全心全意接受某事物时，你才能够好好的理解它嘛。也许就可以用这样的方式去联想到 perceive 它有理解、认知、察觉、意识到的意思。我们顺便补充几个有相同字根的单字。第一个是 conceive，好，它的字首 CON 带有强调语义，它也有一起共同的意思。那么 sieve 是取得，那共同取得要怎么联想呢？其实 conceive 这个动词可以指怀胎怀孕，同学们就可以用这种两个人共同迎接新生命的方式去联想到 conceive 它有怀胎受孕的意思。那还有像我们中文会说孕育新的想法，孕育出新点子，用这个方式去想到说 conceive 它其实还有构思、构想、设想的语义吧。好，第二个补充的是 deceive， 它的字首 DE 它有分离或否定的意思。那么字根 sieve 表示取得，同学们可以试着想，用不好的方式、用不当的方式去取得，那就有欺骗、欺诈的意思咯。那么 deceive 这个动词它就有欺骗、蒙蔽的意思。第三个补充的是 receive， 它的字首 RE 表示往回，字根 sieve 是拿取，那从字面来看就是取回咯，所以 receive 它有接收、收到的意思。好，那接着读到课文第二部分最后一句，他说But even if mukbangers were to stay thin by fasting between broadcasts instead, the effects of this practice on their health would still be questionable. 但就算吃播主在直播期间透过禁食来保持苗条，这种做法对他们健康影响还未可知。我们这边先补充一下 be 动词加 to 加原形动词 be 动词加 to v， 这样子是表达将要怎么样计划做某事。我们把它跟假设语气结合，会变成 if 主词加上 were 再加 to v， 然后接着在前面加上 even， 这个 even if 就是 if 的强调说法，强调说不管情况是否成立都不会影响结果。现在把这3个元素结合在一起， even if 主词 were to v 的句型结构就可以表达如果怎么样就算怎么样，这可以用来表达未来可能发生的假设情况，那通常是指未来发生几率很低或是极不可能发生的情况哦。好，那主要子句的部分我们就是用主词加上 could, would, might 或是 should 再加原形动词。造个例句， Even if the world were to end tomorrow, I would still make the same decision。就算明天世界末日，我还是会做同样的决定。好，那么以上是今天重点整理，我们来回顾今天的单字吧。
Consequence. Even the smallest actions can have serious consequences. Unrealistic. Peter was shocked to hear his client's unrealistic demands. Perception. People's perceptions of gender roles have changed over the past 100 years. Gorge.The children gorged on chocolate cake and ice cream at the party. Chew. It's good table manners to chew with your mouth closed. Exaggerated. The actor gave an exaggerated bow, waved to the crowd, and left the stage. Beneficial. Moving to Europe was extremely beneficial for Tom's career.
Discussion starter starts now.
Here's our discussion starter for today, and the question is, what do you think about mukbang? Is watching mukbang streams beneficial for viewers, or is it harmful to them, and why?
Well, I think watching mukbang streams can be beneficial for viewers because a lot of viewers live isolated lives these days. So having a video that allows them to interact with someone, even if it's through a camera, can make them feel less lonely.
Well, watching mukbang streams is obviously bad for people and society. As the article mentions, people will probably develop bad table manners, and they'll have huge portions of food as a result. So I think the obesity crisis is only going to get worse as a result. Well, everyone, today's article has come to an end, and I sure hope you enjoyed reading along with us. I am Roger.
I'm Helen.
See you next time.